Stop whatever you are doing right now. What I am about to share with you today might be the most important conversation you have this entire year. Not because it is about a disease, not because it is about a medication, but because it is about something that almost nobody in your life has the courage to say to your face. There are habits, quiet, invisible, completely ordinary habits, that are slowly pushing the people you love further and further away from you. And the most painful part is that most people over the age of 60 have absolutely no idea they are doing any of them. Today, we are going through 13 of those habits, counting down from the least severe all the way to the ones that will genuinely stop you in your tracks. And I want to give you a heads up right now. Number 2 on this list is something that nearly every aider adult does, and it is single-handedly responsible for more broken relationships in later life than almost anything else we have studied. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will have everything you need to make a real change, one that could completely transform your social world. But before we get into the list, I want to ask you something. Drop your age in the comments below, and tell me, do you feel like the people around you are as engaged with you as they used to be? I read every single comment, and your answers genuinely guide the content I make for you. Now, let us get into it. Number 13, talking too loudly in quiet spaces. This one sounds almost too simple to matter, but it matters enormously. As the body ages, the muscles around the voice box shift, and hearing sensitivity changes in ways that affect how accurately a person can judge the volume of their own voice. Research has shown that age-related hearing changes can begin as early as the mid-50s and become significantly more noticeable by the age of 70. What this means in real life is that someone may feel they are speaking at a perfectly normal indoor volume while everyone around them is quietly uncomfortable. In a restaurant, a place of worship, or someone else's home, chronic loudspeaking creates embarrassment for the people nearby. Family members often feel anxious bringing older relatives to certain social settings because they never know when an unintentionally loud comment will draw stares from strangers. If you have ever noticed people leaning slightly away from you mid-conversation or gently placing a hand on your arm while you are speaking, it may be worth exploring with a hearing specialist. A simple checkup can change everything. Number 12. Repeating the same stories over and over again. I say this with complete warmth because it is one of the most deeply human things on this entire list. We are the sum of our experiences, and our stories are how we make sense of who we are. But when the same story gets told 3, 4, or 5 times within the same gathering, sometimes within the same hour, it creates a quiet tension in the room. People start exchanging glances. Conversations get carefully redirected. And over time, people start declining invitations, not out of cruelty, but because they genuinely do not know how to address it. Research published in aging and social psychology journals has found that repetitive storytelling in older adults is most often linked to mild changes in working memory, not dementia, simply the natural shifting of how memory is stored and retrieved after 65. The brain does not always register that a story has already been told. The solution is surprisingly simple. Ask someone you deeply trust, a son, a daughter, a close friend, to give you a gentle, private signal when it happens. Something as small as a soft tap under the table. One woman in her early 70s asked her daughter to do exactly this, and within 6 months, her family told me that dinner conversations had become something everyone genuinely looked forward to again. Number 11. Refusing to try new things or go to new places. Rigidity is something the aging brain develops as a kind of protective response. The area of the brain responsible for flexibility and adaptability begins to slow down after 65, which means that unfamiliar situations can feel genuinely more overwhelming than they did at 40. But here is the real consequence. When someone consistently refuses to try a new restaurant, see a different kind of film, visit an unfamiliar place, or participate in a new activity, they become, in the minds of the people around them, a limiting force. People simply stop including them in new experiences because they already know the answer will be no. Research from a major European university found that seniors who maintained what researchers called openness behaviors had social networks 41% larger than those who did not. You do not have to love change, you simply have to be willing to show up for it occasionally. Number 10, offering unsolicited advice and criticism. This one almost always comes from a place of genuine love and real experience, which makes it especially tricky to address. After 60, 70, or 80 years of living, you have genuinely accumulated wisdom that the younger people around you have not yet earned. But there is a profound difference between wisdom that is offered when asked and wisdom that is inserted into spaces where it was never invited. When an older adult comments on how a grandchild is being raised, how an in-law keeps the house, or how a younger family member is spending their money without being asked, it creates resentment, even when the advice is completely correct. Research involving thousands of families found that unsolicited advice was cited as the single greatest source of friction between older adults and their adult children. The antidote is simply a pause. Before offering any guidance, ask yourself one honest question. Did they ask me? If the answer is no, hold it. Number 9, complaining constantly about health. Health concerns deserve to be taken seriously at every age, and I say this with complete sincerity. After a certain point, the body gives you a great deal to talk about. Pain is real. Fatigue is real. The frustration of managing chronic conditions is deeply real. But when health complaints become the dominant or only topic of every conversation, every gathering, every phone call, it creates an emotional heaviness that people begin to quietly avoid. Research published by a major gerontological society found that adults who primarily identified through illness narratives had significantly smaller and less engaged social networks compared to those who balanced health discussions with other topics. One older gentleman I know of realized his grandchildren had stopped calling when he recognized that every single conversation ended with him listing what hurt. He made a conscious decision to save the health talk for his doctor and to spend his time with family genuinely asking about their lives. Within 1 year, his grandchildren were calling twice a week. Number 8, being chronically late or unreliable. There is a common misconception that punctuality and reliability matter less in retirement because life is more flexible. In reality, the opposite is true. When someone is consistently late, frequently cancels plans, or becomes a person whose word cannot be counted on, people simply stop including them. It requires too much rearranging, too much emotional preparation for possible disappointment. Research from major psychological associations has found that perceived reliability is one of the top 3 factors that determine the strength of a social bond, regardless of age. It is completely acceptable and honestly healthy to commit to fewer engagements as you get older, but the ones you commit to should be ones you genuinely intend to follow through on. Number 7, poor hygiene and grooming habits. This is the one that almost no one in your life will ever tell you directly. And I say this with absolute respect because it requires clinical honesty. As the body ages, certain systems change in ways that affect personal hygiene without the person being aware of it. The kidneys become less efficient, sweat gland activity shifts, dental health changes, and skin composition evolves, all of which can contribute to odor that the person themselves may not notice because our own sense of smell naturally desensitizes to our own body chemistry over time. Research from a National Aging Institute found that hygiene-related social avoidance is one of the least discussed but most common reasons adult family members quietly reduce how often they visit elderly parents. Daily bathing, consistent dental care, clean clothing, and regular grooming are not matters of vanity. They are the infrastructure of human connection. Number 6, dominating every conversation. There is an important difference between being engaging and being consuming. When one person speaks for the vast majority of a conversation, steering every topic back toward themselves, finishing other people's sentences, being unable to leave any silence long enough for others to contribute, it exhausts the people around them. Research from a major American university found that conversational dominance was one of the strongest behavioral predictors of social isolation in adults over 65. The correction here is beautifully practical. For every statement you make in a conversation, follow it with a genuine question. Not a rhetorical one, a real one that invites the other person to share something about their own life. This single practice, applied consistently, will change how people experience being around you within weeks. Now, before we get into the top 5, and these are the ones that go deeper than anything we have covered so far, if you are finding this valuable, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. Every week, there is research-backed, honest content made specifically for people in this chapter of life. Your support is what makes this possible, and it is genuinely appreciated. Number 5, constant negativity and seeing the worst in everything. The world at any age contains real problems, but there is a cognitive pattern that becomes more deeply entrenched with age, particularly after significant losses, that researchers call negativity bias amplification. The part of the brain that processes emotional threat becomes more reactive as we age, while the moderating influence that keeps it in check gradually diminishes. In plain terms, the bad things feel more vivid and immediate, while the good things feel more distant and faded. The result can be a conversational pattern that is overwhelmingly dark, predictions of disaster, dwelling on what is going wrong, interpreting neutral events as threatening. A major university study found that seniors who exhibited chronic negativity had social circles that shrank by an average of 52% over a decade compared to their more optimistic peers. And this is important. It is not a character flaw. It is a biological shift, but it can be actively countered through gratitude practices, mindfulness, and in some cases, short-term therapy that is remarkably effective in this age group. Number 4, refusing to engage with technology at all. The majority of social coordination today happens digitally. Family group chats, video calls, shared photos, event invitations sent by message or email. When an older adult categorically refuses to engage with any of this, sometimes wearing that refusal as a badge of authenticity, they quietly remove themselves from the ongoing flow of family life. They are not part of conversations that happen between gatherings. They miss the spontaneous moments. They are simply not in the loop. Research by a major global survey organization found that seniors who actively used communication tools reported feeling 38% more connected to family members than those who did not. I am not suggesting becoming a social media expert. I am suggesting that learning to make a video call, join a family message group, or receive photos on a phone is one of the highest return investments you can make in your relationships right now. Number 3, making every visit feel like an obligation or a guilt trip. This one is the most heartbreaking on the list because it almost always comes from love. When adult children visit and are met with comments like, "I never see you anymore," or "You only came because I asked 3 times," or "I suppose you will be leaving soon," even said lightly, even said with a smile, it poisons the experience. It transforms what could have been a warm and connecting visit into an emotionally loaded obligation. And over time, people begin dreading the visit before it has even begun. Research from a family caregiving organization found that guilt-based emotional dynamics were cited by adult children as the primary reason they reduced visit frequency with aging parents. Not lack of love, not busy schedules, but the weight of feeling like whatever they gave was never going to be enough. One woman in her early 80s recognized this pattern in herself after her son quietly stopped coming by. She made a deliberate shift, greeting every visit with genuine warmth and ending every departure with sincere gratitude. 6 months later, her son had started showing up spontaneously, without being asked, for the first time in years. Number 2, refusing to admit when you are wrong. Here it is, the one I mentioned at the beginning. And I want you to really sit with this, because in everything I have observed, this single habit does more lasting damage to relationships in later life than almost anything else on this list. As we age, the ego becomes increasingly defended. The mind, having gathered decades of real experience, begins to genuinely believe it has earned the right to certainty, and in many ways it has. But the inability to say, "I was wrong, I made a mistake," or "you were right about that," especially to adult children, grandchildren, and partners, creates a dynamic where the other person feels permanently unseen and permanently invalidated. Research from a leading medical school found that older adults who demonstrated a willingness to acknowledge error had dramatically higher relationship satisfaction scores and significantly lower rates of family estrangement. The people who love you do not need you to be perfect. They need to know that you value truth and their experience more than protecting your own sense of being right. Those 3 words, "I was wrong," are among the most powerful in any language, at any age. Number 1, withdrawing emotionally and becoming unreachable. This is the quiet epidemic that nobody talks about, and it is the most damaging habit on this entire list, precisely because from the outside, it simply looks like getting older. It shows up as preferring to stay home, watching more television, being less interested in conversation, saying "I am fine" when you are not, saying "do not worry about me" when you desperately need help, saying "it does not matter" when it matters enormously. After significant loss, the death of a spouse, the end of a career, the body beginning to fail in ways it never used to, many older adults pull inward. They stop initiating contact. They stop expressing needs. They become emotionally walled off in a way that reads to the people around them as not wanting to be reached. And so the people around them stop reaching. They interpret the withdrawal as a preference rather than what it actually is, a cry for connection that is not being heard. Research from a major geriatric society found that emotional withdrawal in seniors over 75 was associated with a 67% increased risk of clinical depression within 2 years, along with a corresponding collapse in social support. What makes this number 1 is that it is entirely self-reinforcing. The more you withdraw, the fewer people reach out, which confirms the feeling that nobody cares, which leads to more withdrawal, which leads to deeper isolation. I know of a man in his late 70s who had not left his home socially in nearly a year after losing his wife. With patience, clinical support, and gradual reconnection, he eventually joined a weekly lunch group and reached out to old friends he had not spoken to in years. The last time I heard about him, he said quietly that he had forgotten what it felt like to look forward to something, and that now he did again. He said he thought he had been waiting to die. He said that now he was not. That story is the reason I make content like this. Here is what I want you to carry with you as this video ends. Getting older is not the enemy of connection. These habits are, and every single one of them is changeable. Not one of the 13 things we covered today requires youth, physical strength, or a different past. They require only awareness and willingness. 2 things that are entirely within your reach right now, today, regardless of your age. The research is unambiguous. Older adults who maintain rich, honest, 2-way social relationships live longer, experience less cognitive decline, recover from illness faster, and report dramatically higher life satisfaction than those who do not. Loneliness, in clinical terms, is as dangerous to your long-term health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That is not a figure of speech. That is what the data consistently shows. And the antidote does not begin with moving closer to family or finding new friends, although both of those things are wonderful. It begins with looking honestly at the patterns you bring to the relationships you already have. It is never too late. Retirement years, when lived with genuine self-awareness, can become the most connected, most fully alive years of an entire life. Not in spite of age, but because of everything that age, honestly embraced, makes possible. You have earned every year you are living right now. Do not spend them behind a wall. If this video resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. And leave a comment below. Which of these 13 habits do you think is the most common? Or is there one you recognized in yourself today? I read every comment, and your honesty is what makes this community something truly worth being part of. Take care of yourself, and take care of the people around you.